Lesson 7.5, we're going to apply properties of logarithms. We have three properties, the product property, quotient, and power property. So the first one, for product property, we can see that we're multiplying m and n. And when we have multiplication, that means we're going to break it apart and add the two logs. Because logarithms and exponentials are inverses of each other, we're going to add exponents when multiplying. So that would be like if I had 5 cubed times 5 to the 4th, we know that that would equal, because the bases are the same, 5 to the 7th. Similarly, if I have b to the m times b to the n, that's going to equal b, and we cannot combine m and n right here. We're adding and they're not the same, so m plus n. Our quotient property, so now we have m divided by n. When dividing with the same base, we're going to subtract exponents. So that's why we have subtraction here. And finally, we have our power property. You're putting the power in front and multiplying. So here we have our power n, and it ends up in the front. And then we just have our log base b of m. Be sure to pause the video and put these three properties in your notes. You're going to need them for the entire lesson. Now we'll do a couple examples. Here we're going to be asked to evaluate without using a calculator because we are given values. We are told that log base 4 of 3 is equal to approximately 0.792, and we're given a value for log base 4 of 7. So we're asked to evaluate log base 4, and then we have 3 divided by 7, 3 over 7. So that means we're going to be using our quotient property. That simply means we're going to be subtracting. So we're going to have log base 4 of 3, so we just took the numerator, minus log base 4 of 7, and I'm going to put in our value 0.792 minus 1.404, and that's going to be equal to negative 6.612. So this is our answer. So next we're going to be given some different values and use 3 separate examples. So here we're given log base 3 of 12 and log base 3 of 2, and we're asked to evaluate log base 3 of 6, so it doesn't quite fit. So we're going to have to manipulate it a bit so we can use the quotient property. We know 6 is the same as 12 divided by 2. So again, we converted the 6, we changed that to be equal to 12 over 2. So now we can use the quotient property, which means we subtract, then we just subbed in our given values, and our answer is equal to 1.631. All right, again, remember we're using the given values. We have a 12 and we have the 2, and somehow we have to get that to work with the 24. So we are going to say 12 times 2, and we're going to use the product property. Okay, so because we used the product property, we multiplied 12 times 2. That means when we break it apart, we're actually adding, so we get an answer of 2.893. Now, we can use something called change of base formula here, and instead of breaking apart the 24 into 12 times 2, we could use base 10 and put that into our calculator and write it as a division problem. So in your calculator, I'll write down what you should type in, and you should get the same answer that we just did. So the 24 should be in the numerator, and our base is in the denominator, and this is a division sign. And when you put that into your calculator, you should get 2.893 when you round it. One final example here. When looking at example 4, we have to figure out how to manipulate this 32, and remember we're using the 12 and or maybe the 2. So hopefully you know that 2 raised to the power of 5 would be 32. So recall when we're using our power property, the exponent goes in the front. So the 5 gets multiplied to the front. And then we have our log base 3 times 2 left over. We know that that log base 3 of 2 is equal to 0.631. That's given up here. And when we multiply it out, we get 3.155. So again, in your notes, make sure you have your properties written down, and then I also put a reminder your change of base and how to use that. The last 2 things we need to learn to do in this lesson is to expand a logarithm or condense one. So first let's look at expanding. So we're given log base 6 and we have this fraction. So we're going to start off with our quotient property. And I want to point out we're not calculating, since we're not given values to sub in. We're just using our properties to break it down into components. So first of all, we're going to use the quotient property. Then we're going to end up using our product property. And then finally, we should be able to use our power property. So I started off using the quotient property, which means because we had division, we're using subtraction. And then you can see here we have multiplication, so we can apply the product property. So that's going to be log base 6 of 5 plus log base 6 of x cubed minus log base 6 y. Now you should be able to see that we have an exponent, so now we have to use our power property. So because we're using our power property, remember this 3, this exponent goes in front, so it's plus 3 log base 6 of x, and then I just brought down the beginning and the end of the example. Because we were expanding, this is my final answer. We're going to look at one more expansion. All right, so we're starting off with log base 7 of 3x squared over 5y cubed. So we can see we're going to use our quotient property, which means we just subtract. Now you should see that we have a couple things going on here. We have multiplication. So we're going to work with our product property. So because it was our product property, you can see that we used addition. However, we had this minus sign, so the entire quantity is subtracted. So it was really important that we remembered to put in our parentheses, so that negative is going to be distributed in. The next thing I want you to notice is we have an x squared and a y cubed. So that means we're going to use our power property. So when we distributed the minus sign, we ended up with a negative log base 7 of 5 and a negative log base 7 y cubed. And then we used our power property, so our 2 goes in front and our 3 will go in front of this last one. So this is what our answer is going to be for the expanded form. And also notice, because the 2 was not on the outside of the parentheses, only the x was squared. The quantity 3x was not squared, so it's important where the exponent is. Finally, we're going to condense a natural log, and we need to ask ourselves, so basically we're doing the opposite of expanding. We need to figure out where the 6 and the 4 came from. So we're looking at the 6 and the 4, and we know that we get a number in the front when we're using our power property. So our power property says that we're going to get the natural log x raised to the power of 6 plus natural log y raised to the power of 4. Now we have a plus sign. That plus sign means that we're dealing with the product property, so we get ln x to the 6th times y to the 4th, and that's our condensed form.